Hi, my name is Ethan Leitner, and I'm going to be your guys' week 6 discussion leader. And this week there are two articles that are discussed. The first one is by Marilyn Fry, and it's called Oppression in the Politics of Reality. And the second one is called What It All Has to Do with Us by Johnson Allen. All right, so starting off with the first one, Oppression by Marilyn Fry. So the thesis of this is that oppressed people, he specifically focuses on women, are trapped into oppression through restriction and reduction of different barriers. Furthermore, the first main point that I think he has is that Fry believes that the root word of oppression comes from the element press. What she basically means by this is that oppression causes people to be caught in a trap between barriers and forces that restrict them and prevent their mobility. Okay, so for the second point that helps support the thesis, Fry talks about how one huge feature of oppression is the double blind, which is how oppressed people's options are reduced to a very few, and they are all exposed to censure, penalty, or deprivation. An example given is that oppressed people are expected to put a smile on their face and be cheerful, and when they show any signals of something different than that, they are perceived as angry, mean, or bitter, which can all lead to terrible things such as rape, murder, and more. There's also an example that he focuses on with women in sexual activity, how they're always trapped. If they have sexuall activity, often they be labeled as like a slut or a whore, but then if they restrict themselves from it, there is also problems that can occur there too. So the third main point that helps support the thesis, Fry speaks on oppressed people being caged in by forces and barriers that are systematically related to each other and cause restriction. An example he gives is that if you just focus on one wire of a bird cage, then you would think that the bird could just fly out. However, when you step back and get a whole microscopic view of the cage, then you can see that the bird is trapped by 6 systematically related barriers. I think that Fry is trying to say here is that when you look at the bigger picture and take into account not just one, but all the different barriers and how they connect to form a trap that oppressed people try to go through to get through to be set free, then you can really see the situation for what it is. So one other point that I think helps support the thesis, there's an example brought up of opening a door for women and if it is actually a good thing to do or not. Fry thinks that it is not a good thing to do because it symbolizes the fact that men are willing to help women in situations where there's no need for help. When they actually need help over important issues or could do something that could be actually helpful, they're never there. Furthermore, Fry kind of concludes his article by focusing on the birdcage example and emphasizing taking into account the whole situation and how different barriers form together to restrict women and oppressed people. So now we'll go on to the second article by Johnson Allen, What It All Has to Do with Us. So this thesis that I found is that social systems cause oppression and privilege to take place, and we must understand them to understand privilege and oppression. That's the main focus that he's trying to emphasize on. The first point that I think helps support this thesis that he makes is that a big part of the social world has to do with how each individual thinks, feels, and intends. This individualism can cause a lot of problems, according to Allen, such as creating a distorted and narrow view of reality and making us blind to the very existence of privilege itself. Okay, so the second part that I think helps support what Allen is saying here with this thesis is that when discussing privilege, Allen argues that it is important to understand the dynamic between people and systems of privilege. Our experiences with different institutions and people shape our beliefs and how our identity positions us in society. An example of this would be how white heterosexual men are seen as the most important people through media and movies and all that kind of stuff. A lot of what Allen is saying here has to do with the socialization wheel we discussed a couple weeks ago in class and how institutions and parents sort of shape our beliefs and can make us, partake in privilege without, not necessarily being our intent, but more so like it's just something that we're kind of born into and that, we really don't have we don't really think too twice about it. We just kind of believe what, the people with power in our lives, believe in what everybody else is telling us that has power. So, yeah. So, onto the third point that I think helps support the thesis. So, alongside socialization, we are also shaped through the path of least resistance, which is the easiest course to follow in any given situation. A lot of the time, this is something that we may not realize. An example of this would be a manager being more drawn to choose a white, heterosexual, non-disabled male, who has, parts of the identity that are associated with dominant groups, and to get a promotion because of the social systems present with how certain groups get more privilege and because they are more similar to themselves. Sometimes people realize other options exist, but they take the easier way out. An example of this particular part of the path to least resistance would be not speaking up when seeing your friends being mean to a girl because you'd be made fun of and excluded from what the group thinks. And nobody likes feeling that way. And to conclude this article, so Alan talks about how our intentions can be good, but we can still partake in the system. The way to change oppression from happening is through changing the system and realizing and improving on paths of least resistance. People are what makes social systems happen, and because we are playing this game, we deal with the consequences too. Each small instance of oppression adds on to the problem. Alan believes that we need to speak up and stop being silent over these issues, because if we don't, that is also adding on to the issue. A lot of the times we'll see, oppression, take place, but, it takes guts to, stand up and, say something. So I give props to people that, are willing to do that. And I think in doing that, that can be part of the solution. And he kind of ends it, heading in that direction. So, yeah. All right, that's all I got for this week. I appreciate you listening, and I'm looking forward to discussing this with you guys in class.